We are learning more about the mother who was killed by her 14-year-old son in Riverview. Tiffany Harris's boyfriend says she loved her kids and ultimately saved his life that frightening night earlier this month. He was shot 5 times but survived and is now sharing his story.
He started staring off into space, looking at me, but he wasn't actually looking at me. Those were the last normal moments before 14-year-old Adeem Berry grabbed a gun and opened fire on his mother's boyfriend of just 1 month. September 2023, Riverview, Florida. What began as an ordinary day in the Summerfield subdivision ended with Tiffany Harris dead in a neighbor's driveway, Cortevious Cruz fighting for his life with 5 bullet wounds, and a teenage boy holding a gun to his own head as police surrounded him. What pushed this kid, with no criminal record, to murder his own mother? And why did Tiffany's final act, wresting the gun from her son, save her boyfriend's life but cost her own? Welcome to our channel. Hit subscribe if you're new here. Drop your city in the comments. Let's break down this Florida tragedy that left a family shattered and a community in shock. Tiffany Harris was 39 years old when her life ended in that Riverview driveway. A Florida mom with 3 kids who, by all accounts, put her children above everything else in her world. She was a light. Everybody loved her, Tiffany's mother Teresa told reporters after losing her daughter. The pain in her voice was raw, unfiltered, the kind that comes only from a parent burying their child. Friends who gathered at Tiffany's wake painted a picture of a woman whose generosity knew no bounds. Stories flowed about how she'd opened her doors to people who had nowhere else to go, how she'd feed anyone who was hungry, even when her own cupboards weren't exactly overflowing. She didn't have much, Teresa explained, but with what she had, she did a lot. September 2023 should have been a time of celebration for Tiffany. She was about to cross that special threshold into becoming a grandmother. Her daughter was pregnant with her first child, a baby that Tiffany would never get to hold, never get to spoil, never get to watch grow up. And there was something else new in Tiffany's life, Cortevious Cruz. They'd only been dating about a month when the shooting happened. Just 4 weeks of getting to know each other, of building something that might have turned into something more. Cruz would later describe Tiffany from his hospital bed as very loving and caring, a woman who loved her kids to death and spoiled them with any and everything. That's what makes what happened next so hard to process. How does a mother who gives everything to her children end up dead at the hands of her own son? What happens inside a family home that turns love into violence in the blink of an eye? And what about Adeem Berry, the 14-year-old son who pulled the trigger? A kid with no prior criminal record, a teenager who minutes after shooting his mother was threatening to take his own life in the middle of a suburban street. The tragedy that unfolded in that quiet Summerfield subdivision raises questions that don't have easy answers. But to understand what happened on that Saturday afternoon, we need to walk through the events minute by minute, starting with the moment everything changed. September 16, 2023, in Riverview, Florida. No warning signs, no red flags, just another day in the Summerfield subdivision, until it wasn't. Inside Tiffany Harris's home, her 14-year-old son Adeem Berry sat watching TV with Cortevious Cruz, the man who'd been dating his mother for barely a month. Just an ordinary moment between a teenager and his mom's new boyfriend. Then something shifted. He started staring off into space, looking at me, but he wasn't actually looking at me, Cruz would later tell Fox 13 News from his hospital bed. Concerned, Cruz asked if the boy was okay. Adeem didn't answer. Without warning, the teenager got up and walked out of the room. When he returned moments later, everything had changed. He was holding a gun. No argument, no build-up, no warning signs that Cruz could see. 1 minute they're watching TV, the next minute Adeem is pointing a weapon at him. The first shots rang out. Cruz, caught completely off guard, had no time to react as bullets tore into his body, his hands, his shoulder, his jaw, his leg. 5 shots in total. Then came the moment that would define everything that followed. Hearing the gunfire, Tiffany Harris rushed into the room, screaming at the top of her lungs. His mom came out screaming, "Gave me time to get out of the house. That kind of saved me," Cruz later recalled. Those precious seconds, Tiffany's intervention, created just enough distraction for the badly wounded Cruz to stagger out of the house. He made it to the driveway before collapsing, blood pouring from multiple wounds. Inside the house, a mother faced her armed son. We don't know exactly what words were exchanged, if any. We don't know if Tiffany begged, reasoned, or simply acted on instinct. What we do know is that she managed to wrestle the gun away from Adeem, her final act as a mother trying to stop her child from making the worst mistake of his life. It wasn't enough to save her. After the confrontation with his mother, Adeem Berry fled the scene, gun back in his possession. Tiffany, possibly wounded already, made it a couple of houses down the street before collapsing in a neighbor's driveway. That's where first responders would find her body. Meanwhile, 911 calls flooded the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. One neighbor reported a man shot multiple times. Another caller described a boy running through the streets, waving a firearm. The quiet afternoon had transformed into chaos. Emergency vehicles raced into the subdivision, neighbors locked their doors, and somewhere in the neighborhood a 14-year-old boy was on the run with a loaded gun. Cruz, somehow still conscious despite 5 bullet wounds, was rushed to Tampa General Hospital in critical condition. As medical teams worked to save his life, he had no idea that Tiffany, the woman whose screams had given him those crucial seconds to escape, was already gone. According to Adeem's older brother, who witnessed part of the incident, he had heard his mother and Cruz arguing before the gunshots. When he realized his younger brother had shot them, he fled the house, fearing for his own life. But what exactly triggered this explosion of violence? What could make a 14-year-old boy with no criminal history suddenly decide to open fire? And why did he run instead of staying at the scene? The answers would begin to emerge as police closed in on the armed teenager running through the streets of Riverview. As Tiffany Harris lay dead and Cordavius Cruz fought for his life, Hillsborough County Sheriff's deputies spotted Adeem Berry running through the neighborhood, gun in hand. What followed was captured on body cameras.
I don't want to hurt you, bro. I do not want to shoot you. Put it down. You don't want to end it this way. You don't want to end it this way, brother. I promise you. Whatever happened today, it can be fixed. Don't pull the trigger. Put it down. Adeem, put it down, buddy. Don't do it, man. Put it down.
16 minutes of raw, tense negotiation between armed officers and a 14-year-old boy in crisis. The footage shows Adeem wearing a red Mario t-shirt, his face twisted with emotion. Throughout the standoff, he raised the gun to his head at least 6 times, threatening to end his own life right there on the suburban street. "I don't want to hurt you, bro. I don't want to shoot you. Put it down," one deputy pleads on the recording. His voice is steady but urgent. "You don't want to end it this way, brother. I promise you. Whatever happened today, it can be fixed. Don't pull the trigger." You can hear Adeem screaming in the distance, his words indistinguishable but his distress unmistakable. Have you ever wondered what warning signs might appear before someone commits a violent act? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Could anyone have seen this coming? Sheriff Chad Chronister would later describe the scene as one that nightmares are made of. But in the moment, his deputies maintained remarkable composure, slowly talking Adeem down, convincing him to lower the weapon. The standoff reached its climax when Adeem appeared to reach for the gun again. Deputies fired a non-lethal 40-point projectile, striking his hand. The impact was enough to prevent him from grabbing the weapon without causing serious injury. In the body cam footage, you can see the moment the fight leaves the boy's body. The same teenager, who minutes earlier had allegedly murdered his mother and shot her boyfriend 5 times, now looks small, defeated, crying as officers place him in handcuffs. When asked who he had shot, Adeem doesn't respond. Meanwhile, just houses away, investigators were piecing together what had happened inside the Harris home. They found evidence suggesting Adeem had shot at Cruz while the man had his hands up, begging for his life. The bullets had passed through both of Cruz's hands before striking him in the face, a detail that paints a vivid picture of terror and desperation. Sheriff Chronister didn't mince words about what this meant for the teenager's future. This 14-year-old young boy's life is over too. he will never see the outside of a detention facility. Despite his age, Adeem Berry would face adult charges: second-degree murder with a weapon, attempted first-degree murder with a firearm discharge, and aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. The most shocking part? Before September 16, 2023, Adeem had no criminal history, nothing in the system that would have flagged him as violent or dangerous, nothing that would have predicted he would allegedly murder his own mother and attempt to kill her boyfriend. So what happened inside that house? What could possibly trigger such violence from a teenager with no prior record? As investigators combed through the crime scene at the Summerfield subdivision, a clearer picture began to emerge of what happened before the first shot was fired. Adeem's older brother provided crucial testimony. He told detectives he heard Tiffany Harris and Cortevious Cruz arguing just before gunshots exploded through the house. The sound prompted him to leave his room, only to witness a scene straight from a nightmare: his younger brother shooting their mother and her boyfriend. When Adeem allegedly turned the gun toward his older brother, the sibling fled the house, fearing he'd be the next victim. This testimony added a new dimension to the case. What began as a seemingly unprovoked attack now had context: an argument between Tiffany and her boyfriend of just 1 month. But how did that escalate to murder? Sheriff Chad Chronister didn't hold back when describing what his deputies found. This family's life is forever changed. A victim's life was taken, and because of his actions, the suspect's life, as he knows it, is over. The scene itself told a story of terror. Evidence suggested Cruz had put his hands up, begging for his life, when Adeem opened fire. The bullets passed through both his hands before striking him in the face, a detail that paints a vivid picture of his final desperate attempt to shield himself. Despite being just 14 years old, Adeem Berry faced adult charges that could keep him behind bars for decades: murder in the second degree with a weapon, attempted murder in the first degree, premeditated firearm discharge, aggravated assault with deadly weapon. What makes this case particularly baffling is Adeem's complete lack of prior criminal history. No run-ins with police, no documented behavioral issues, nothing that would have flagged him as potentially violent. Sheriff Chronister indicated that domestic violence was likely what prompted the shooting, though the exact motive remains unclear. What could make a 14-year-old boy so enraged by an argument between his mother and her boyfriend that he'd resort to murder? While investigators pieced together the timeline of events, Cortevious Cruz was fighting for his life at Tampa General Hospital. His injuries were severe. Gunshot wounds to his hands, shoulder, jaw, and leg left him unable to eat or shower on his own. But the physical pain paled in comparison to what came next. I wake up maybe 2 or 3 days later, and I'm looking at the news that night. I see there's a 14-year-old boy who's killed his mother, and I notice it was my situation, and I found out that she had died from the situation, Cruz recalled. Imagine that moment. Waking up in a hospital bed, your body riddled with bullet holes, turning on the TV, and discovering the woman you'd been dating, the woman whose son shot you, was dead, and you were watching it on the news like everyone else. The revelation would forever link Cruz to a tragedy he never saw coming, and to a woman whose final act may have saved his life. Cortevious Cruz shouldn't be alive. 5 bullets, 5 separate wounds, shots to his hands, shoulder, jaw, and leg. By all odds, he should have died in that driveway in Riverview, but he didn't. And he knows exactly why. It was a dagger because she was so good to me, Cruz said from his hospital bed, his voice breaking with emotion. It hurt me even more because I feel like she got hit because she was trying to save me. This is the moment that changes everything about this case. The moment that transforms Tiffany Harris from victim to hero. When Cruz speaks about Tiffany, you can hear the weight of survivor's guilt in every word. They'd only been dating for a month, barely enough time to learn each other's favorite movies or food preferences. Yet in those critical seconds when gunfire erupted, she rushed toward danger, not away from it. His mom came out screaming, gave me time to get out of the house. That kinda saved me, Cruz explained. Those precious seconds. Tiffany's final gift allowed a badly wounded Cruz to escape with his life. While he collapsed in the driveway, she confronted her armed son, wrestling for the gun that would ultimately take her life. The physical toll on Cruz was devastating. The injuries left him completely dependent on others, unable to eat or shower on his own. Basic human functions we take for granted became impossible tasks, but the psychological wounds cut deeper. Imagine waking up days after being shot, turning on the TV, and learning that the woman you were dating had died in the same incident, and that her son was the shooter. Cruz described that exact moment, watching the news from his hospital bed and suddenly realizing the 14-year-old killer they were discussing was Adeem Berry, and the murdered mother was Tiffany. "She was my hero," Cruz said simply. 4 words that encapsulate everything about this tragedy. 4 words that define Tiffany Harris not by how she died, but by what she did in her final moments. For Cruz, moving forward means carrying 2 burdens: recovering from near-fatal injuries and living with the knowledge that someone died so he could survive. Someone who rushed into gunfire when she heard shots. Someone who, in just 1 month of dating, had shown him what true sacrifice looks like. The Summerfield subdivision in Riverview fell silent after the shooting. Neighbors who witnessed the aftermath or the tense standoff between Berry and police were left stunned that such violence could erupt so suddenly in their community. For Tiffany's family, the grief was overwhelming. Her daughter, pregnant and preparing to make Tiffany a grandmother, now faced motherhood without her own mother's guidance. A child would be born who would never know their grandmother except through stories and photographs. Tiffany's mother, Teresa Harris, channeled her grief into a call for action. "Little kids are getting a hold of guns," she told reporters. "I know we can't change these gun laws, but everybody needs to be held responsible for not keeping them in safe places." Her words raised critical questions about how a 14-year-old accessed a firearm, and whether this tragedy, like so many others, could have been prevented with proper gun storage and accountability. The death of Tiffany Harris forces us to ask uncomfortable questions. How does a 14-year-old get access to a loaded gun? What pushes a teenager to turn that weapon on his own mother? And most importantly, could this have been prevented? Let's talk about firearms first. We don't know exactly how Adeem Berry obtained the gun he used to kill his mother. What we do know is that across America, thousands of kids access unsecured weapons every year. Proper gun storage, locked safes, separate ammunition storage, trigger locks isn't just responsible ownership, it's a matter of life and death. As Teresa Harris put it, everybody needs to be held responsible for not keeping them in safe places. Her words cut through the political noise around gun control to focus on a simple truth. When kids can't access guns, they can't use them to kill. Then there's the mental health angle. While we don't know if Adeem had any diagnosed conditions, his behavior just before and after the shooting raises questions. The blank staring Cruz described, the immediate thoughts to kill himself after the murder. These suggest a teenager in profound crisis. Access to youth mental health services remains limited in many communities. Wait times for appointments can stretch months. School counselors are overwhelmed, and the stigma around seeking help keeps many families from reaching out until it's too late. What about warning signs? Adeem had no criminal history, but that doesn't mean there weren't red flags. Sudden mood changes, withdrawal from activities, fascination with weapons, expressions of violent thoughts. These can all signal a young person heading toward crisis. For families caught in conflict, resources exist but often go unused: family counseling, crisis intervention, temporary housing options when tensions run high. These services can create space for cooling down before violence erupts. The case of Tiffany Harris and Adeem Berry isn't just a tragedy, it's a wake-up call, a reminder that prevention requires vigilance on multiple fronts: gun safety, mental health support, conflict resolution, and community awareness. What do you think could prevent similar tragedies? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever intervened when you saw warning signs in someone you know? What resources do you wish existed in your community to help families in crisis? Because the truth is, preventing the next Tiffany Harris case isn't just about one solution. It's about all of us recognizing our role in keeping our communities safe. Tiffany Harris died as she lived, protecting those she cared about. Her final act wasn't just motherly instinct, it was heroism in its purest form. One split-second decision changed everything. A mother rushing toward danger. A boyfriend given precious seconds to escape. A son whose life is forever altered by a moment of violence. The case reminds us how quickly ordinary days can turn tragic, and how thin the line between life and death truly is. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and notification bell. We'll be back next week with another case that will make you question everything you thought you knew about human nature.